we left off here with our start from the other day, right? We kind of created our cylinders. We kind of put them out here on the sides. We created our mirror modifier. But we even applied after the mirror modifier a subdivision surface modifier, right? So it's all part of your add modifier stuff. But I also ended up doing some extrude border edge stuff, right? And you notice I can come in here and I could actually select these edges, right? 2 for edge mode. And you can still come in here and do shaping on these, right? Now you can always just shape by moving the handles themselves. Left click on those. But remember, now that we're on our spaceship, we've got a lot more curved forms. So we don't have to be as careful with our move, right? We don't have to move it exactly up or down, left or right. We can take advantage of the view move features, right? Remember that white circle on your move tool. Remember, W is the quick key for that. W, right? You just hit it and it turns it on. That'll do a view move. Remember, when you're using industry compatible, middle mouse button does view move also, right? In fact, basically, middle mouse button is kind of your alternative for all your manipulators, right? For move and rotate, it's view, move, view, rotate. For scale, it's uniform scale. It scales all 3 dimensions at the same time, all 3 axes. And even stuff like your extrude, right? It'll do view extrude. So just kind of reminding you a few about those things that you could do. One thing to keep in mind also, and this is purely optional, but I wanted to show it to you today before we kind of do some other stuff. Remember, the very top of your tool side here, particularly when you're in your modeling workspace, right, is a selection tool. Right here at the top is a selection tool. Now, you'll notice that some of your tools, right, we've talked about this before, but I always like to re-talk about it. You'll notice that there is a little triangle next to many of these tools, right? That means that there's other versions of this. So if I hold down my left mouse button on the select tool at the very top here, which by default is kind of a orange dashed box with a cursor in it, if I hold down my left mouse button on that, you'll see that of course you have the box select, which is our normal one. You have circle select, right? We've seen that before where you can just kind of left click drag your cursor and it selects. But one of the things you'll see in there also is something called the tweak tool. And it looks like a cursor with the move icon. That's because that's what that is. Now, you'll notice that you can assign these to quick keys. And if you have a 5-button mouse, which some of you guys don't, right? Some of the mice in here are 3-button mices. I have a 5-button mouse back here. But I've actually assigned that to the tweak tool. What is neat about the tweak tool, and it is optional. You do not have to use it. It's just a move tool. But what it does is it does view move the moment you click, right? So if we use our regular move tool, we have to select and then click again, right? So there has to be at least 2 clicks. You know, a left click to select something, and then another left click or middle click if you're going to use view move to actually move. So that's 2 clicks. What's cool about the tweak tool is it is a view move feature, and it works on vertices, edges, faces, whatever kind of selection mode you're in. It's 1 click. So you notice I can just left click drag on an edge. I don't have to do that 2nd click. So you might find yourself in a better place here to start to be able to tweak some of these shapes just by left click dragging. Now, I think you could see that that would probably be pretty disastrous when we were doing our furniture, right? To just kind of left click drag these up. But this is a really cool feature. It's actually one of my favorite modeling tools really in any software, right? Because all software has a version of it. And you see you can keep the tweak tool on and switch to vertex or switch to face. But it's simply just a view move tool, right? It's just view move. But instead of having to do 2 clicks to select and then the click on whatever move handle you want to use, or middle mouse button if you're going to use view move, it's one stop, right? You just left click drag and it does view move. So it cuts a step out. It cuts a 2nd click. Generally, the fewer clicks you have to use, the faster you could do stuff, right? The more productive you could be. Generally, a bit easier. Do you have to use the tweak tool? No, it's just a move tool. If you're happier, if you feel more comfortable still with the regular move tool, use that, right? In particular, if you want to move multiple, you kind of have to use that move tool usually, right? But I figure now that we're on the spaceship and we've got more curved forms, this is much more kind of appropriate to talk about, right? Wasn't something we'd really want to take advantage of on our room, right? Our furniture. But remember, your Q will toggle through these, right? So if you keep hitting Q, right up here, you see how it just toggles through our types? Box select, circle select, lasso, tweak. So you just hit Q to toggle through those also. You don't have to actually click on that menu. But I figured that'd be neat for you guys to see that, right? Kind of cool to see it. Good to see. Now, I want to show you a little bit more about how to bridge and start connecting stuff. I also want to show you a bit about the inset and our ability to use individual origin, right? So these are going to be some of the new things besides the tweak tool today, right? But remember, the tweak tool is optional, right? You really don't have to use that for shaping if you don't want to. I just want to make sure you know it's available. Now, I'm going to go to 3 for face mode, right? 3 for faces. Remember, this is in edit mode, though. So if you just click on this menu here, you go to edit mode. 1 by default is the quick key for that. But once edit mode's turned on, vertex, edge, and face are right there, right? But we know there's a good set of default quick keys that are already where your left hand's at, right? Usually it's a good idea, since mice are usually right-handed mice, right, to do as much with your left hand. So that's one of the reasons why, like, Alt and your mouse buttons, QWERTY, 1, 2, 3, 4 are nice default shortcuts. And one of the reasons why I love industry compatible, because it's really taking advantage of that left hand kind of resting naturally by your space bar and your Alt. There's already good muscle memory ergonomics there. Heck, half the time you don't even have to remember what it is. You just kind of know where to go, right? So remember, 3 is face mode, though. 3 is the quick key for face mode if you have industry compatible on, which at this point just about everybody should have it on. If for whatever reason your quick keys are not working at all, keep in mind it might be just that your cursor is not in the viewport. But also you might have forgot to turn industry compatible on, right? So if you have that problem, don't go, oh, I don't know what's going on, I'm not going to ask a question. Guys, ask a question, right? You're not supposed to know everything. You have a teacher so that you can ask questions, right? So remember, right? So 3 face, and of course left click allows us to select a face. And then I can shift left click, right? Remember, shift adds to selection. So I can kind of left click that big N-gon right there. And then I can shift left click that big N-gon. And I want to create a sharper shape there and kind of get away from this weird diamond shape. Now, you might remember we saw this tool a bit when we did like our chair top, like our cushion for our chair, and our kind of little groove, our little inset down for our table, right? Remember, there is a tool right below extrusion called Inset. Remember, if we look right here on the left side, right, particularly if you're in modeling workspace, but generally once you're in edit mode, you'll see this stuff too. You'll see we have these tools here, and we know this. We've seen it a bunch as we've gone on. Extrudes, like move, rotate, scaler here, selections there, extrusions here. Right below that is the Inset tool. And the Inset tool is actually a lot like an extrusion, right? It creates new geometry, just like an extrusion would, but whereas an extrusion lets you kind of move along the average normal direction or the individual normal directions, or view extrude, right, which we've seen before, Inset creates the new geometry and scales it in. There is a default quick key for it. It has a default quick key, I. So you don't have to add that. That is a default quick key when you have industry compatible on. I for Inset, but it is right here. Now, you notice it brings up a handle, which is yellow. You can left-click drag on that, and you see what happens when I left-click drag on that? Particularly if I drag left, right? Kind of you just drag until it goes. You see how it actually creates new geometry here, right? See how it created a new row? But it scales it. Now, once again, believe it or not, middle mouse button can actually be used for a lot of these things. If you don't want to have to move your cursor up to select that yellow handle, often middle mouse button will do it, right? Not on every tool, right? But on many of them, right? So I can actually do a middle mouse button drag to create another inset. And you see how it's automatically already kind of created a more of a crease right here? That's because, believe it or not, when you have edges and edge loops close to other edge loops at corners on a subdivisional surface, it makes that rounding the subdivisional surface does smaller, right? And because it's smaller, it starts to approximate a bevel, kind of a, not a razor sharp edge, but a sharper edge. So believe it or not, you don't have to actually use the bevel to get bevels, or at least the visual appearance of a bevel, and basically the geometry of a bevel, with subdivisional surfaces. Now, I kind of want to push these down, right? So Inset just let us kind of extrude or create new geometry and scale those in. But remember, if I right-click, right? Remember, if you right-click, it brings up your face context menu. And remember, towards the end of last term, particularly modeling, we would do extrude faces along normals, along normal direction for like some of our stuff on our chandelier. We can use that again here to just extrude these down or up. Right? So you see how that extrude along normal direction comes in really, really handy? Bring that in a little bit. Now the nice thing is you'll see the Inset tool is still on. So oftentimes you can do that extrusion, and whatever your tool that was still active over here is still on. So I can just kind of grab on that yellow handle to do another Inset in a little bit. You always want to move it in a little bit though, right? So when you left-click drag, drag it a bit. And now you see we have a much kind of sharper form here. Q is a great way to turn off your tools, by the way. I know I've mentioned this before as well, but Q is a great way to kind of turn your selection tool on. I just did another Inset after I did that extrude along normal in. And we'll come back and do a little more work to that, but you see how all of a sudden this now has a nice kind of more hard surface form to it? So I kind of wanted to get you guys to see that a little bit, right? But I also wanted to kind of just get you to see a little bit of bridge and to kind of get this back part connected. So of course, we're still in face mode, right, which is 3. Remember, it is in edit mode, face selection. And I can go in here and I can just shift left click, shift left click, shift left click on those 3 right there. Kind of the bottom ones, because that one right there is kind of from that Inset. So let's kind of select that, those 3 right there. Remember, that's just 3 for face mode, because we're selecting faces. And then, of course, I can left-click to select, shift left-click, shift left-click. And then, of course, we can hit delete, just like we did last time, right? And then I can pick faces, because remember, when you delete in face mode or edge or vertex, it brings up the options. And I can delete faces. And now we see that we have some border edges there, right? Remember, we kind of really talked about that last time and a couple times during class this week when we weren't doing new lectures. I now have edges that are open, right? Faces. These are border edges now. So I can hit 2 for edge mode, right? I'm already in edit mode. So remember, you can always just switch right here. Right? Remember, there's buttons for them right there, but 2 is the quick key for that. And what I can easily do is maybe just double left click to grab that little edge loop right there. Remember, double left click selects an edge loop. I can hit W for move, maybe view move that back a little bit. And of course, these are border edges, so I can extrude those. Right? Good old extrude tool. Remember, the white circle, though, is your view extrude, but middle mouse button also does it. And I can just do kind of a couple of view extrudes there. Like that, maybe. Maybe a view move in, right? Middle mouse button does that view move automatically, but it is that white circle. Remember, double left click on an edge selects an edge loop. Bring those in a little bit. And now I can select some edges to bridge. Now, it doesn't have to be all of those, right? You don't have to bridge all of these. This is part of what's cool about this method is we have that ability to bridge what we want and extrude what we want at the time and then kind of add more and bridge more, right? This is not going to stay a paper-thin ship. We're going to build a whole bottom structure for this, connect it to the bottom parts. And it's going to be all these same tools and tricks. Now remember, with Blender, and this is actually true of Maya also, if you guys ever end up using Maya, you need to bridge same number to same number. So in this case, I've got 2 edges selected here, and then kind of roughly opposite of it, there's 2 edges selected there, so it's 2 to 2. If I try to do 2 to 4 or 3 to 4, it'll create triangles. So we don't want that. So it's really a good rule to follow the same to same rule. 2 to 2, 3 to 3, 4 to 4. And these are border edges, right? Because the border edge is an edge that only has one face connected to it. Remember that right-click tool. And we've seen this a ton on our last project. Remember, right-click brings up your context menu for that selection type, in this case, edge. One of the tools in there towards the top is bridge edge loops. You'll see there is a bridge faces version of this, so you can actually bridge polygons as well, not just border edges, and it follows the same rule, same to same, right? Same number, same number. So I can bridge edge loops, and you see how it actually creates new geometry between there. Bridge is quite accurately named. It's creating a bridge between two separate parts, like a real bridge does. That's how bridge works. That's how easy it is to use. You just got to make sure to select 2 edges to 2 edges, or 3. It doesn't have to be 2 to 2, but it should be same number to the same number. You also notice they should be on different parts of the model, right? They have to be separate selections. And now we've got bridge, and we know how our bridge works, right? Now, just one last thing. You might not even need it, but I want to make sure to remind you guys that you have it. This is something we also saw in our chandelier, like the extrude along normal direction. If at some point I wanted to make both of these engines bigger again, I can go to 3 for face mode, and I can kind of select that inner face there, right? That face there, shift left click. Remember our select menu, you might not need this, so this is more optional. Like, I just want to make sure you guys know about it. We'll talk about it and use it more this term also, so this will not be the last time we see this, but I wanted to make sure you guys have it available as an option right now if you need it, kind of like the tweak tool. Remember, our select menu has select more and less. They have default arrows, up and down arrow. So what I can do is I can just select some polygons on there, hit up arrow, to kind of get the rest of this. And then I could always do down arrow to shrink, and you see how it'll kind of shrink just that part. Down arrow again. So sometimes you grow past and then shrink. And that's just up and down arrow, right, in your select menu. Now, if I turn my scale tool on, R for scale, you'll notice right now by default, this is set to global, which honestly for what we're going to do is fine. And it's set to median point, right? Remember when we saw these on our chandelier, right? Global and the one that looks like a chain link. Global is kind of the rotation of the manipulator. The chain link is kind of more the position. And you can combine those in different ways. Blender's system for this is actually quite good. In this case, global's fine, but I am going to want something different than median point, because you'll see if I do median point, you see how they kind of scale in towards the center of the whole selection, right? So it sees both of these separate selections as one, and it scales in towards that center. Like I said, you might not need this. It's okay if you don't use this. I just want to make sure you know it's available of it. Remember, if you click on the chain link, right above median point is individual origins. Individual origins. If I turn that on, and I do my uniform scale, which is the white circle, you see how each one scales independent of the other one? They're kind of given individual centers. And so this could be a great way to kind of make that bigger, maybe move it out a little bit if you want to. So if you want your engines to be bigger, just turn your scale tool on, but switch to individual origins right here. And now each one has its own individual center. You might not need this, at least right now, right? But it's cool to know about, right? So like I said, a big part of today was just reminding you guys about the Inset tool, getting you guys to see a little bit of how you can create creases with subdivisional surface, like kind of more beveled areas, extrude along normal direction, but also just bridging and extruding border edges again. The tweak and the individual origin features are more optional, right? You can use them or not use them if you need them. And I figured that would be a good place to just kind of take the model a little further. In fact, with the exception of the tweak tool, we've actually used every one of those other tools. And I've talked about them before, right? Particularly the extrude along normal individual origin we used on our chandelier, right? Extrude, we've used that. Bridge is newer, right? We didn't really use that much, and tweak is newer, but that's optional. So keep in mind that a lot of this is stuff that you have seen before, tools and ideas you've seen before, and we're just applying extrusions to border edges now. But as always, there's going to be some new stuff as we build this, right? All right, like I said, that'll be a good place, I think, to stop for this new video.